Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you making time. What I'm going to do now is I am going to share my screen. You'll see me, you'll see slides. It should be amazing. Let's see here. All right, so what we're going to talk about today, you have to read this title the correct way. Do you even know who you're talking to? You have to read it like that. This is all based on my book, which is about how we create brands in a world that really just doesn't want any more brands. I think we can all agree on that. Normally, this is a talk that I do in a different way. So usually I'm in a big room, there are people, I get to engage, I get to make people uncomfortable, and I ask them, what have you been thinking about this morning, before you got on, before we got to this conference, before you logged on to this YouTube? Give me a list, make a list in your mind, or actually write it down. And I'm going to come back to this in just a moment. I want to know what is on your mind, what you've been thinking about. And then we're going to check back in on that. This is what we're going to talk about today, the items that are listed here, the difference between companies and brands, organizations and brands. What do artists know that we don't know always as marketers? How have platforms helped or harmed you? And then we're going to talk about facets. Down in the bottom right, you're going to notice my Twitter handle. I will be thrilled if you're asking questions, you can add them there, and I will be getting through today, answering questions if you have any. You can find all my contact information. And in fact, if you go to that Twitter page there, you'll find at the very top, my pinned tweet is a link to my book specific, which I am right now giving away for free as people are indoors, being responsible and social distancing. I wanted to do something nice, so I'm going to send people PDFs of this book. If you hear what I'm saying and you like it, then you will definitely love this book. And if you don't, you probably won't. And the PDF does not even make a good doorstop. So I apologize, but I think there's some value here and I hope you like it. We're going to get started and dive in here. I want to start with positioning because this is foundational to how we build brands and how we build interest, how we build our products, our offerings in the minds of our consumers. So here's a great example. I stole this example from Michael Fanuel. If we think about what is occupied in our mind, so now I would ask you, what have you been thinking about? Let's go back. And I would suspect that nobody would volunteer the idea of roast beef as something they would think about. If you tweet at me, I will see notifications and I can actually pull up some if some come in, and we can see what people have been thinking about. But in the meantime, I would posit that nobody has been actually thinking about a brand. What we've probably been thinking about is my family, health. Did I wipe that thing down? I saw someone while I was out walking the dog. Was I 6 feet away? Did I get too close? They had a cough. I mean, our minds are flooded with really, really important things that get closer to basic needs right now, especially right now. But even during the best of times, here's something where usually I never hear this when I do this presentation. Nobody raises their hand and says, I'm thinking about Volkswagen. I'm thinking about, Starbucks. They may say coffee, or they may say I need coffee, or they may say I'm thinking about breakfast, but they never say a brand because our brains are just not always wired that way. We think of brands as a response to something else. So this example here, nobody really has a lot of time that they're thinking about roast beef. And in fact, the sales at Arby's bore that out. People would go once every 2 months, probably is the number I'm making up. So what they did is everybody know the tagline. You're all saying it at home. I like this virtually. I can hear you. I'm getting the vibes. You're saying, we have the meats. We're all saying Ving Rhames. We're all imitating Ving Rhames. I can't get that low, but that's what we're doing. And this was a genius move because meat occupies such a bigger spot in your brain. And all of a sudden, now they've added this other facet to it, which is sandwiches. We have the meats for sandwiches. An even bigger part, because I don't always want roast beef. In fact, hardly ever. I don't really ever say I want meat, but at least now with sandwiches, that's something I want pretty often. Almost every day for lunch, there's going to be a time where someone says, you want to go grab a sandwich? Oh, they have it, and they have the meats for it. It's not going to be one of those weird vegetarian sandwiches, which are actually pretty good. Don't at me. So this brings us to positioning, and this talks about the difference between an organization and a brand. Okay, and if you've done any marketing, you know this. This is what positioning looks like. You take your frame of reference as, what am I replacing with this product or this brand? What's the meaningful benefit? That means, what does it mean to me? And most importantly, who is the target customer? Do you even know who you're talking to? Because if you don't know who that person is, then you don't know what they're going to be using your brand to replace. And then you don't know how to make it meaningful to them. But so often we use something much more simplified to get to a frame of reference and a meaningful benefit. We'll use something like demographics. But a brand, the difference between an organization and a brand is not this pyramid. It's knowing who that person is and then making a promise to them that we will never break. That's what it is. This brand promises it will always deliver this meaningful benefit to you when you want the frame of reference, whether that's a product category, a brand category, or a solution more likely. Because as we just learned, nobody's thinking about the brand first, they're thinking about the need first. So we start with demographics in a lot of places. Now, according to, I think this came from Pew, this is the median US citizen at the time when I wrote this book. They're 38 years old, household income. They watch 30 hours of TV and 14 hours of social media per week, which is low for me, 17 pounds overweight. They drink exactly 11 alcoholic beverages per week, which cracks me up as a stat. And their name is James or Mary, which I don't know. That's the average. Those are the average names, which is surprising to me, but my son's name is James. So maybe I should be less surprised. Does this sound like everybody who's watching? Does this sound like your exact audience? Does this sound like you're the person that you are making the promise to? Have you ever told a joke? The jokes I tell at work at Arizona State University are not the same jokes I would make at a pub with my friends. I wouldn't make the same jokes to my kids that I would make at work, right? I want to make the joke in the context of the person that is going to receive it that I want to laugh. So I don't think we can all make the same promise or the same joke or the same communication to this person as we would to our audience. Which brings us to teen movies. Teen movies are near and dear to my heart. This is how crazy we've gotten. So if this is the average, I want you to look at how things changed from 1985 to 2004. And mind you, we're 15 years beyond Mean Girls. In 1985, there were 5 categories, right? There was a brain, an athlete, a basket case, a princess, and a criminal. Do you know why John Hughes had 5 groups, 5 cliques? Because in 1985, that's all there was. Everybody that saw that movie was like, oh yeah, that looks like my high school. In 1995, there's a couple of scenes where Cher is walking and describing all the cliques, and she gets up to something like 15. In Mean Girls, it's kind of countless. They come back, there's a few scenes too, and you can see the number of cliques. It gets up to around 18 that she mentions. And now I want to mirror that with this. I want you to look at how media changed as all the amount of types of people have changed that we've identified in the world. Now I've stopped at 2017 because I'm lazy, but on Netflix's 13 Reasons Why, there's none of this cliques. Every character is an individual person, like real life, where it's impossible to put them into a bucket. It's impossible to put them into a category. They're unique and they're difficult to reach, and they require a personal touch, right? We've seen the move to marketing to personalized comms. And you can see how media has mirrored that, where you had your 3 networks all the way down here, and you've moved all the way here to countless. I mean, people were afraid when the VCR came out, boy. Then when the iPod came, forget it. You can just see it mirrors almost exactly how the shift in persona types, which are limitless. So again, I asked you what you were thinking about. We think about things that interest us. What he actually said was we read things that interest us. Sometimes that's an ad, but I've adapted it. Sometimes it's a brand when it meets our needs, when the promise that we want is being met. So everybody's familiar with Radiohead. What do artists know that we don't know? Radiohead figured out how to reach people emotionally through their product. Their product is music, right? Not really. When their album In Rainbows came out, they rebelled against the record company. They distributed that at a pay what you want. They were the first major artist to do it. They weren't the first one to do it, but they were the first major one. They released the album and said, hey, if you feel like paying us nothing, do it. If you want to pay us what you used to pay us for a CD, go ahead and do it. And it turns out they actually got more per album directly being paid to them than they would have through their deal with the record company at that time. So it worked out for them. But what the record industry, what the music industry learned was that that emotional connection that was created through the product In Rainbows by Radiohead was the gateway to the real products, to more products. It turns out their products is selling tickets to shows, t-shirts, the next album. Each product is creating an emotional connection. It's creating a promise that they fulfill through their music, sometimes through video projects, sometimes through other means. If it has Radiohead attached to it, I know how it's going to make me feel. The promise is going to be met. And what you see with artists, a lot of times you'll see recording artists are a great example. They have a first album that they've worked on their own for years or a long concentrated period of time. And people love that album. And then the second album comes and it's not as good because usually there's more voices involved. There's more people pointing and directing it. There's more rush to get a new product out to the market because they think the album is the product. The album's not the product. All those ancillary things are the product. And if you don't deliver the same emotional connection that you did on the first album, we almost always say, the second Wolf Parade album is not as good as the first Wolf Parade album. That is a dated reference. I apologize. But I'm old and that's the kind of music I still like. So what they bring is a point of view. And what a brand needs to have is a point of view. And if you don't have a point of view, if you didn't look at the slide and say, I know what our point of view is, at Arizona State, I know exactly what our point of view is. If you don't know what your point of view is, you are in deep trouble because that means you are not making a promise. You are not delivering something that the recipient, the ideal person, the 13 Reasons Why person can hear. That's an individual that knows and is connecting with your brand on that emotional level in the same way that Radiohead does, believe it or not. Maybe not identical with all the squeaks and synthesizers, but you get the idea. Let's look at some examples here. So this is a funny example now. This was in the book before the TV spot that came this holiday season, but Peloton is a brand that has a point of view. They know who their customer is. Pretend I said that in November and you'd be like, yeah, of course, right? Who is their core customer, right? Their core customer is someone that believes, that has this view. If you go to their website, I don't have it up right now, but if you go to their website, you would see that the Peloton bike is always centered in a living room with a view like this. That's insane. So their core customer is a person that has enough money to have an apartment that has a view like this or a home and is willing to put their exercise bike in it, which is crazy. It's insane. So what happened is they went to the market. They got more voices, just like that new band that is releasing their second record. And they said, well, now you've got this thing. Now you've got to grow it and expand bigger, wider to the market. And when they took this kind of message that their audience really did connect with, really did understand, really did want to reach into their pocket and pay for, the market was like, what are you even talking about, Peloton? Because Peloton did not even know who they were talking to. They were all of a sudden they were whispering in the ears of people that were like, yes, I love this. I do want this personalized exercise experience and I will pay you those thousands of dollars. It's worth it, right? That's good that they had their audience. All of a sudden they were, instead of whispering that, they were whispering into a megaphone at a mall. And people were like, are you guys crazy? That promise is insane. You don't even know me. Don't tell me that. That's nuts. And we got the viral reaction to the Peloton wife ad. It's because they did not know who they were talking to. So Peloton is a great example of what I call a specific brand. They work in this specific way where they've triangulated their audience, their promise, the frame of reference, and the meaningful benefit, which is being bore out now, where those people that all of a sudden were at the mall and reacted to the viral Peloton wife ad are coming around and saying, well, in this time, now the Peloton having the exercise equipment at home makes a little more sense. And maybe I understand it a little bit better. I wasn't ready for it then. So I'm not going to read this to you. It's in the book, which again, you can get for free if you find me on Twitter. And that Twitter handle is here. So the specific brand does this. If the blue field on this slide is all the people you can reach, your addressable market, it's this tiny % of people that are included and 90% that are excluded. So again, let's go back to the slide just because I think it's fun to look at teen comedies. It's excluding almost everybody in here, but picking your 1 or 2 clicks, or in the cases of the later films here, the 13 Reasons Why, the show, picking the specific people that will understand the message and understand that promise and lean in. They'll want to hear it. So the question is, who are you for? Who are you trying to reach? Who is your promise for? Have you identified who this white dot is for you? Have you identified the clique that makes up your brand, your offering, your promise, that wants to hear it, that gets it, that will get the emotional resonance from it? I'm going to take a sip of coffee here. I apologize, but it's early here in Arizona. So I want to show you 2 competitive products, okay? The Kia Forte, which is on the left of the screen, is priced at $18,000. The Maserati Ghibli is priced at $70,000 to start. And I would tell you that both are priced correctly. So even though they both meet the same role in the each manufacturer's lineup of vehicles, or similar. They're both sedans, and they both kind of sit in that same spot in their product offering portfolio. They're both priced correctly, even though one is almost 4 times as much, right? 3.6 times as much price tag. And why? Because of who they're even talking to. So if you go to the website, and I should have this, I could have pulled this up. If you go to kia.com and you look at the Forte, the way it's positioned is exactly right for the person that would want to buy a Kia. The Kias are great cars, especially at that price. And since I've been doing this research when I'm looking for my next car, I'm going to go shop a Kia because the messaging works for me. It's about, hey, they don't say we're cheaper anywhere, but it does say, it rationalizes that you will stand out in this car. This car is well appointed. It has all the things, you won't be missing out on anything. It says it has all the latest technology. It says it meets all the safety standards, which would probably had been a concern in the past, maybe not so much now, because I know they've had consecutive years of successful positive tests since their launch. And on the Maserati site, you will see words like craft, pleasure. Just go and look at the 2 sections for these cars. Look at the sections on their interiors, and you'll get immediately the promise they're making, and you'll be able to picture in your head who they're talking to, who both manufacturers are talking to. And you'll understand why knowing who you're trying to reach lets you understand your voice, the promise you need to make, the meaningful benefit that is meaningful to them, not to you, and the frame of reference, what you're competing against. And all those things that I just referenced about how each car is sold to each other are called facets. They're not quite attributes of the brand, but they're ways in. They're shiny, glinty objects about your product, a description, that lead your exact audience or adjacent to that audience to notice you and come in and look for further inspection. That's when nurture campaigns start. That's when we start following and closing the loop to better understand our audience. Because the real truth about when we try to predict who's going to come buy our cars, higher education, these high consideration products, especially these high consideration offerings, something where we're asking someone to spend a lot of time with us. Selling a book is one thing. Selling a 2-year series of seminars is a different thing, right? Different level of consideration. And the truth is, we have no idea. We don't know how people are going to act. I don't know how I'm going to act. I go to the store and there's no toilet paper, and that doesn't make any sense to me. We don't know how people are going to act. But then when I get to the store, I see that there's scarcity, and I go, well, even though I've got enough, maybe I should buy some because I see it here and I don't know if the next person's going to buy it all. So my behavior is influenced by context, always. Context is a religion to me, understanding that context. I want to tell you a story. I'm going to make it very quick because I'm running short on time here. You remember these boom boxes? This story was shared with me that a consultant was doing a focus group on boom boxes like this. And I've obscured the name of the company here, and I'm not even sure if it was the same company. But during the focus groups, they were testing this old kind of black and gray model of boom boxes against a new look and feel for boom boxes that were these these yellowish ones that you remember them on the market. They did come and they made a minor splash and then they disappeared before boomboxes totally disappeared. During the focus groups, every person, 3 groups, 12 people, every person said, no, you should go with the yellow ones. They're flashy, they're new, they're hip, they're cool. You would love it, I want it. Everybody's gonna wanna buy those, right? And everybody on this, everybody who's streaming this has probably participated in a focus group. You've been on the other side of the glass eating the M&Ms. And so you know what happens at the end of a focus group. If you do one for Subway or a restaurant company, you usually give them a gift certificate or something to thank them for their hour that they've given you valuable insight for. At the end of this one, they had set up 2 tables, free boom boxes. And on one table were the new flashy yellow and blue ones. And on the other table were the old black ones. 36 people all took the black one after saying for an hour straight that the yellow one was better. We have no idea how we're going to behave. We're terrible predictors of our own future behavior. We're terrible predictors of our own response. We can kind of respond in a big picture. We can predict my values are this, and so therefore I would do X or Y. But we are in the moment, we are terrible, terrible predictors of how we're going to behave or how other people are going to behave. Eesh, even worse, because we don't understand the context. So it sounds like a great idea. If I'm at a store, maybe I would buy the yellow one. But once you present it to me for free and I just have to walk past it and grab it with no judgment, I'm taking this black one. I don't want anyone looking at me. Who knows why they chose one over the other, but they all chose the old model. Let's say I asked all of you the next time you go to the drugstore, I need you to get a card for me. Can you help me out? Can you grab, I need to get a card. Can you just grab a card, any card? I just need a greeting card. All of you would be like, yeah, it's no problem. I can just walk through the aisle and just randomly reach my hand in and grab you a card. That's easy peasy. That would take me no time at all. Okay. What if I said, I need you to go to the store and pick out a card for your mother for Mother's Day? It's a different set of choices. So the idea of just communicating in general, like I'm doing now, I can't really tailor this talk because I'm not seeing your reactions, your feedback. I can jump slides if I can see that people are frowning or bored. I can move back to the teen comedies because people love teen comedies, whatever I had to do to engage you. But here, the more specific I could get, the more I can craft the message and the more I can craft that promise. And when we're choosing thing like a Mother's Day card, we tend to get super, super specific because we know my mom would be surprised if my card wasn't funny. For example, I wouldn't send one that has like the plastic and the flowers on the front and the papyrus script and all that stuff. She expects me to have like a little cartoon dog making a dumb joke. That's my brand, and that's our kind of the way we communicate. And I know that's what would make her laugh. The idea is to be the only one found. If you search specific, I promise I'm not the only thing found. But the idea is to be the only thing found when someone searches for the meaningful benefit that you're offering. To make it so specific, see, that's where the word comes from, that you come up. So I want to talk about Humira. Humira is a product that is a drug that is used to address several ailments: arthritis, plaque psoriasis, spondylitis, Crohn's disease, and ulcerative colitis. And the reason I know this is not because in any of the ads they list those things. In fact, they never list all those things. That's what's genius about it. Instead, they have 3 different campaigns going. One of them is about plaque psoriasis. And it was my wife that we were watching TV and she goes, didn't we see, it's saying it's about plaque psoriasis, but didn't we see one for Humira that talks about colitis? I said, no, that can't be right. Yes, it's true. The same product, and in fact, the same logo, and this is slightly outdated. They've just launched a new set of campaigns. So they've created a master brand, that's the name of the product, but they make unique promises, they're facets, to reach the people that have the specific ailment. Humira works by targeting some cells that address all of these things. It works with something in your immune system that helps with all these ailments. Can you imagine the courage it took for that marketing team to go in and say, hey, instead of doing one campaign where we list all the things we can solve, we're going to do 3 campaigns. We're going to triple our media spend because The reason why is I can't make a promise that Humira can solve everything. Here's 7 things we do. Something for everybody. Not only do we have sandwiches, but we have birthday balloons. What? We do this one thing exceptionally well. If you're suffering from this, we're the solution for you. It's a tremendous move. So I want to talk about, do you know who you're talking to with ailments? I want to talk about and product benefits, and do you know who you're talking to with design? These are the logos right now. These are current logos for hamburger stores, I guess, fast food, restaurants. Do you notice anyone stands out? Now, normally this gets, I have a verbal reaction. So right now I'm imagining you probably standing and pointing at your screen and saying, this man is a genius. That's what I'm assuming is happening. But if you look here, one of them clearly stands out. If you don't know Shake Shack, I feel terrible for you. Shake Shack is delicious. Hopefully in a couple of weeks' time, we're able to get back there. They noticed, like you're all noticing now, that everybody else is red and some are yellow. And they came out with black and green is almost never used with food. And they said, we're going to make it just close enough by putting this hamburger icon, but so much different that it'll stand out. And so as everybody else has used, hey, Jana, as everybody else has used red and yellow, they've gone this other way and used black and green. And they've totally carved themselves out, that you say, I know it's hamburgers, but I also can immediately tell it is some different experience. They have the courage to do something totally different. They're making a totally different promise. They're doing it in a totally different way. Method. Before method came out, this is what this highlighted item here is what soap and most home products look like: functional, utilitarian. And what method was introduced to the market to do was actually to use better ingredients to produce kind of cleaner products, better environmental products, better for your skin, better for waste. And what they realized in their marketing was that as they were testing the product, nobody could get that the stuff inside the bottle was the same if it all looked like this. So they started creating these unique bottles. And then what they learned was that people were buying it for the bottle, but then happy about the performance of the product. And so those people actually kept the product out. In the past, we would hide these ugly bottles because look how they look. So your dish soap, your hand soap, which is probably out in abundance right now, we kept it under the counter. But once it started looking a little bit more like art, people kept it up on the counter, and then a visitor to your home would come see it. And so it had this added benefit. And so the promise was actually about the meaningful benefit was actually disguised by a second meaningful benefit that they didn't even know existed, and neither did we, because we can't predict our own behavior. Worked out pretty well for them. I'm going to do one last example here. This is Shoe Carnival. They want you to come in and buy shoes. If you have a coupon, we'll take it. We love it. Get in here, get out. And you can see by the way they're using their square footage that every square foot is monetized. Transaction, that's what it is. This is Manolo Blahnik's store. This is a display of power. This is a display of fashion power. We're going to waste our square footage. We don't care. And as a customer, when you walk in, you recognize that those 12 pairs of shoes, those 12 pair have to pay for all this square footage. Where here, I know that there's probably 1,000 pairs just in this picture that are going to pay for all that square footage. And so I understand immediately the relationship between the price, the real estate I'm in. Here, I would probably expect someone to offer me a cappuccino while I'm looking at one of these 12 pair. None of these fit me. And then you see how that plays out here on the websites as well. The Shoe Carnival one immediately has pop-ups with coupons. They're still monetizing every square pixel. Manolo Blahnik, this is what you get. Here's one shoe. We're going to give up the whole screen with no brand messaging, because the promise is not actually about Manolo Blahnik. The promise is about you will stand out. If you put this shoe on, this is what the world looks like from people looking at you. They just notice this. There's nothing else on the screen to distract them. So I'm running out of time. So what I want to do is offer everybody, if you heard this and you want to hear the full talk, find me on Twitter, I'll be happy to do this virtually. I will be doing these as much as I can during this crazy time, because these are pretty, people are looking for things to do and ways to learn, and I want to be a part of that and happy to join in with people.